Hello everybody. Well, today I'm going to review another gaming case. This one I picked up for a friend and they agreed that I should go ahead and review it. The case that I have here is the Thermaltake, the V200 TG. It has RGB fans in it, so without any further ado, let me go ahead and open up this box and see what's inside. Let me open this dude up. Let's see what I got here. Okay. Pull it out this way. Boy, this looks awful familiar already. Well, we have a nice tempered glass. It's a dark tempered glass. Not necessarily a fan of that myself. The front, however, it bends, so that's not glass, but it looks like it's got the same coloring as the side. I'll leave that on for now. Right up at the top here, it looks like the top has a magnetic filter on it. Wow, it looks very similar to my daughter's glass. Instruction manual. It's got a better instruction manual than she had, several pages to it. I'll see if I can find this online and display it on the video at this point so you can take a look at it. Now for the inside of it. Well, let me take the other side off first. Two of those same rather cheap regular screw with just a plastic hood on it. The reason I'm a little concerned here, it looks very, very familiar, to be honest with you. Okay, what do we got here? Well, it's got plastic tabs, it's not screws. So let me see, how could I get this off? Try pushing from the bottom here. Yeah, that does that. Let's see if I can bend these plastic tabs in here. Looks like it is coming off. The whole thing is plastic, that's for sure, but I cannot disconnect it because the wiring harness to the front panel is anchoring it to the rest of the case. But I can see, here's the three. These are supposed to be RGB fans. I'll fire it up later so we can actually see how those RGB fans look. The back fan, though, is not RGB. We'll see these three light up, I guess. Let me put this back so the cables don't break. Okay, now I got the case opened up for a more detailed look. And you know what? I bet anything, and I'm going to go and check my video from the MuseTex case review. And I'm going to compare them because this case, almost in its entirety, inside looks exactly like that. I mean, I was wondering, because it looks like 3 or 4 manufacturers were using that same frame. It looks like this is the same exact internal frame. It even has the same motherboard mounting studs already pre-installed. It has the same sections for doing the 2.5-inch SSD drives. The front panel is different. The MuseTex case, as I recall, was much different in terms of what was inside of here. So as you look down inside this area here, where it goes to the front panel, I believe it was actually a little bit more forward of that. So that is a difference. The fans are obviously different. They don't have that split blade fan like the MuseTex had, obviously. But this shroud here, where you put the power supply, looks exactly the same. And this part here for the 3.5-inch hard drives, also exactly the same. So let me turn it over and take a look at the other side. The back is exactly the same as well, as far as I can tell. It even has those cheap I/O slot cards that you have to twist out and you can't put them back in. It does look like they've already installed what feels like a metal, so that's a little bit different because the other one felt plastic filler for one that was already removed. But it looks exactly the same. The same thing for the power supply area, the rear fan. Let me take a look back here now. Oh, there is a big difference here. It has what looks like a fan and RGB control unit. That's probably what's wired to the front panel to control the RGB, and it also distributes all the power to the fans. Also, these look like they are, let me count them. They are 6-wire ribbon cables rather than the ones that were 5 on the MuseTex. So this wiring looks like it's entirely different. And also the connector for providing the power to the overall system in terms of the fans and the RGB. It's using a SATA power connector rather than a Molex. So all the wiring looks different. It still has but even the openings look the same. Also, it has this bottom filter. That looks exactly the same as the MuseTex one. But obviously the controller for the fans is different. So I'll try to take this out and take a look underneath it, see if it has any sort of real logic associated with it, or if it's just wiring connecting up these connectors. Okay, that's the basic structure. It's got all the I/O connectors for the motherboard, USB 3.0, 2.0, the audio connectors, and all of the other switches and other miscellaneous connectors to the motherboard. It's got nice feet, it looks like. Oh, they're not metal. They look metal, but these feet are actually plastic. I'm going to leave this on for now, but when I power it up, I'm going to take this off so that we can see what it looks like without that extra piece of film on top. So with that, let me get a motherboard and a power supply in here, connect it up, and see if we can get this thing to light up like a holiday tree. Okay, a critical installation note if you're going to put a 3.5-inch hard drive into this case, which I'm doing for purposes of demonstration on this video. So this 3.5-inch hard drive right here, in order to get it so it locks in place without pulling this front panel off, which I didn't try to do right now because I don't know if it'll even be able to reach it that way, you have to put the screws over on the other side here. And I can tell you right now, that is not a trivial task to get a couple of screws in there. You'll need a real small, stubby magnetic screwdriver like this in order to even have a chance to do that. I happen to have a pretty good set, but that's not always the case. Make sure that you know that if you want to get into here, you're going to need something like that in order to get to those screws. It's probably best to put the hard drive in before you put the power supply in, because once you have the power supply in, it makes it much more difficult. Also, the RGB for this one, which is a very nice feature that I like, can be hooked up to the motherboard. And this is the cable that's coming out of the conglomeration of RGB cables that allows you to do that. So they give you both the male and the female end of it, which is really good because chances are your motherboard will accept the female one. And that'll give you a male one available if you want to connect up to some other fan or other device or pump in the system that you want to have RGB on. So that's a nice feature. I'll talk about how to switch it later. Also, another option you can do by having this. Okay, another thing that I did as long as I was playing with the RGB setup, I bought this little kit from Amazon. It was relatively cheap. It was like, with shipping, like $9.50. And it comes with a remote, and it comes with a controller. The only problem I had with the controller was it required a connector, a standard power connector to it, and it didn't come with that. So I wanted to adapt it to use the power in this computer. So I built this little adapter here between the two. That's where the soldering skills came in handy too, being able to make sure I got that and make sure I insulated it properly. So I was able to put this in here. I got it tapped off of the yellow wire, which is 12 volts, and that'll allow me to control with the remote. But further than that, you see this QR code here? If you open it up with your smartphone, it'll let you download an app. It's called Video Home, I believe, or Lighting Home, something in that effect once you load it down. But it can control this remotely through Wi-Fi. Really nice feature, and I'll demonstrate that once I get it all together. One other thing, please don't grade my wire dressing right now, because it's not a permanent build. This is probably going to be replaced with another PC soon. But I had to put this little controller in here. I'm going to attach it to this little wall temporarily, but it has an actual probe that has to be visible to the front of the case somehow, because the remote is an infrared remote, so it has the little infrared light. So I'm hoping that the dark glass doesn't interfere with it, but I put the probe so that it is in between the fans. Hopefully it doesn't get jammed up in there. If this was a permanent installation, I would fix it here real tough with some good double-sided tape. But for now, I'm just going to put it in temporarily like this. and hopefully this will work. Chances are I won't use this much. If I were to use this case in this format, I'd probably use my smartphone and the app that it comes. Okay, it's up and running right now. I did not turn the RGB on yet. I'll wait to do that towards the end. I did want to show you this, as I showed you when I did the review of the MuseTex case. I had to remove 2 of them this time, and basically you have to tear them out in order to get them out. Those are the slot fillers for the cards that go onto the motherboard. So just take note of that it's one of those that you have to tear the things out. One thing that I did notice, and I'll put a picture up here to show you this, there's a lot of interesting information that's on the side of the box that this case came in that did not show up in the instruction manual. So I'll put that up here on the screen right now. And as you can see, it says the fans are 1000 RPM, which, if true, that's actually slower than the fans that I had on the MuseTex case that I reviewed. So I'm going to go ahead and test that right now. I have my RPM tester, and I'm going to set it up. I got to put the reflecting tape on the fan blades, and then I can go ahead and test it. So I'll do the back fan first. I put a little piece of reflective tape here, a little gray shiny tape. So let me see if I can get a reading from this. See, if you look at the thing here, you actually can see the reflective tape. Hopefully that shows on the camera. The actual recording, looking at it sideways, is like 1160. So we got 1160 RPM. I only did it on the front fan, center one. I'm getting 1002 out of the front fans right now. So here's the case with the LEDs on. Now I'm going to go ahead and pull this plastic stuff off so you can see it better overall. I'm going to just go ahead and pull this stuff off. I guess I broke a rule by not being nice and straight and clear as I did it, huh? And I'll have to pull the front ones off too. Grab it from the side here. And it's pretty good. You know, it's not a bad case at all. Of course, the back one is not lit. The front ones I can actually adjust with the RGB button here. Right now it's in the initial default one. I can make it all red, solid, or green. That was yellow. Green, blue or aqua, blue, white, and so forth. Now it says in the instructions that if I hold down the RGB button for 3 seconds, then I can take control from the remote. Now I went ahead and did that special wiring I told you, and we should be able to get to it here. Let me see if I turn it on. There we go. I got to be right in front of it to see it because it's got the sensor there. So I put the sensor so it's right here, so I can lower it down, I can bring it up. I can pick certain colors that I want the lights to be with these buttons. So it is seeing the sensor here that I put for the infrared receiver. But this is probably not the right way to do it. Let me go ahead now and get my phone going to talk to this. So I have to actually join it. It's called LEDnet 857374. I'm not sure if everybody gets that same number or not, but I got to join that wireless network first. And now I am connected to that wireless network. It's funny how it actually appears as its own wireless access point. Now I've got to run this Magic Home app, and it comes up as such. Shows I'm connected to the network here. I'll click on that for the controller, and now it came up with this screen of colors. And I can just drag this around, and the lights follow it on the LEDs. That's pretty nifty, right? An extra $10. You can do a lot of power with that. This same app is used if you want to put LEDs in your house behind furniture or whatever to give it a little bit of enhancement, so it's a nice little feature. Okay, what I've decided to do is take a baseline of this system that I put into this case before I close it up and raise the temperatures and do a few things that'll stress it a little bit. So as you can see on the left hand side in the middle, the CPU temperature is about 42 degrees centigrade. The motherboard is 31.8. It's telling me the CPU fan is running at 2631 RPM. So with that, I will go ahead now and close it up and see if any of this changes. Okay, now I have the case completely closed up as I just demonstrated, and I'm stressing it as best I can. This is a Windows 7 motherboard and disk, so I didn't want to have to reload it all. So there's only limited things I can do with that since it's only a 32-bit computer. It may not get that hot. But as we can see, I did raise the temperature a bit. It went up to 46.5, and it's doing its best to keep up with all of this. So I guess I'm not going to be able to stress this computer very well. Like I said, it's a 32-bit Windows 7. It doesn't run some of the new modern stress programs. I'm running CPU-Z, which happens to have a 32-bit version, but even putting it in stress mode is not getting it that high. I think it got up to 50 degrees centigrade as high as it got. So with that, I will consider this a reasonable test, not a super test. In the future, I may put a much more powerful computer in there and we can try this again. Okay, that completes my review of the Thermaltake V200 TG gaming case with RGB. I think this one is one I like. I'm not sure I would put a real production type system in it. When I mean production, I mean one that I would use for my video editing, but a good gaming system, I don't see a problem with that. Anyway, thanks for watching, and if you got anything out of this, again, please do me a favor and subscribe to my channel. Very easy, doesn't cost anything. All you do is get notified when you enter YouTube, unless you select email notifications, which I'm not asking you to do that. Just subscribe. I'd really appreciate it. The little head pops here, click on it, follow along, and that'll take care of it. Thanks a lot for watching.